Hello, and thank you for joining us on Newsweek, where we highlight some of the biggest stories that made the headlines recently. I am Mark Otabo. This week, President Tinubu signs 20.7 trillion naira 2024 budget into law, says implementation will be monitored. Also this week, NUC lists 58 illegal degree award universities in Nigeria. And later on the show, EFCC probes 52 companies over FX transactions with CBN. All details in a moment. Stay with us. And thank you for staying with us. This week, the Nigerian educational sector was thrown into disarray when the National Universities Commission, NUC, listed 58 illegal universities operating in Nigeria. The names include those claiming to be affiliates of foreign universities in the country. It also stated that also 9 degree males are currently undergoing further investigations and court actions. The development followed the suspension of degree certificates from 2 Francophone West African countries after an undercover journalist detailed how he acquired a degree from a university in Benin Republic in less than 2 months and was deployed for National Youth Service Corps, NYSC. Now, joining me to discuss this is Zikora Ibe, the Policy and Research Officer and Corporate Accountability and Public Participation Africa. Zikora Ibe, good evening and thank you for staying with us.
Thank you so much. Good evening. Thank you for having me on the program.
All right, thank you. All right, let's kick off this very quickly. Now, the NUC is obviously saddled with the responsibility to promote quality standards in our institutions. Now, this latest discovery with over 58 illegal universities has question marks written all over it. How did we get here?
Thank you so much. I think that it's quite embarrassing and shameful at the recent discovery of certificate racketeering in other countries outside Nigeria. And it's commendable that the NUC has come out to denounce this situation and also promised to undertake an investigation. But then we must interrogate the underlying motivations that has gotten us to this point. At this point, it's important to say that having people, flock to other African countries for a certificate shows something wrong with our society. It means that our society is definitely a certificate possessed society. We depend solely on certificates in a way that doesn't even allow us interrogate if these certificates are of quality or not. But then there's also the underlying insinuation there of what has happened to our own educational system over time that has made people look outward to gain the certificate that even we offer here in the country. For the past few years or for a very long time, Nigerian educational system, especially our tertiary education, has witnessed a downswing in terms of infrastructure, in terms of quality, in terms of lecturer motivations for empowering lecturers to be in the classroom and teach as they ought to be. So we have continued to witness a downswing in our tertiary infrastructure, our university infrastructure in the country, giving wing to people going outside to study and even purchasing fake certificates from these places, as we have seen. So the point is, over the time, we say that government can no longer fund public universities, and that has given rise to the proliferation of private universities. But at this point, we can see that the problem is not, the solution is not the proliferation of private universities, but in the maintenance of standards, in the empowering of universities to actually live up to expectations and aspirations, so that even proliferation of private universities in that sense does not really solve a fundamental problem that is lacking in our university structure. So as much as we want to commend the NUC for denouncing the certificate racketeering, I must say that this is a problem that has been since time. 2 years ago, this same news was announced. And we had the same uproar. And again, it has repeated itself. What are the quality control measures in our education sector, the stopgap measures that do not allow this kind of situation repeat itself? So when situations like this happen, it calls for broader thinking beyond what has happened.
Okay.
The perpetrators and connivers should be brought to book, but then their underlying motivations.
All right.
We must go back to the drawing board. Can you hear me?
I can hear you, of course, I can. Let me put it
Yes,
through.
we must.
Let me put you through this quickly. You've elaborated quite enough. Now, look at Nigeria, for example. Even with the focus on degrees, quality of life hasn't really changed much. Now, thousands are still waiting in line to get a job. What do you think can be done to serve as an alternative so that bagging a degree doesn't become a situation of life and death?
Pardon me, I didn't get that, please.
Yeah, I said looking at the present situation in Nigeria, you get it?
Yes.
Even with the focus on degrees, quality of life hasn't changed much. Thousands are still waiting in line to get a job. What can be done to serve as an alternative so that bagging a degree doesn't become a situation of life and death?
Yeah, so you've said it that our country is a country that is focused on certificates, even when that certificate might not necessarily translate into other forms of professionalism. So the point here is for us to improve our standards across all sectors, not just the education sector. And in fact, when we talk about the certificate not being life and death. Yes, it is true that we have to come to a place where certificate is not a life and death. But for us to do that, we must come back to the beginning. For a society to progress, education must be put at the forefront.
Okay.
With education comes the empowerment of mind and the possibilities that individuals in that society can go on to do greater things. If you look at Nigeria and look at our educational system, you would see that from primary to secondary and to the tertiary institutions, our system has collapsed. So that we cannot say that there is any meaningful gains that people who pass through that system might realize after school. And this is worse because at this point in time, government is even abdicating its responsibilities to fund public education, so that citizens can enjoy the quality of life that enables them do something great with their time. So when you leave the funding of public education for charlatans to go in and do as they like without coming under any regulatory control, that is what you get. Right. Your question, if we are to improve the standard of living in this country, we have to go back to the books to make education a priority. Right. The government cannot keep saying that it does not have money to fund education. What it simply means is that the society can go into chaos. It can be all man for itself.
Right. All right, Zikora.
Quality.
All right, Zikora, quickly, we understand that time is of constraint here sometimes, but quickly, let's look at this. Now, slight concerns for students who have graduated from these universities. Now, what is going to happen to them knowing now that the certificate they are brandishing is fake? They obviously weren't aware, because if NUC had done a thorough job, maybe they would not have fallen victim. Maybe if the system had been transparent enough, they might not have fallen victim. So what will happen to them now with the degree they are carrying about?
It is quite unfortunate that the students of these universities have become collateral damage of this unfortunate situation. But the NUC is in charge of accrediting Nigerian universities. I don't think it's in charge of accrediting external universities outside the country. Okay. What the NUC does is to make sure that those universities, when you bring the certificates from those universities, they make sure that those certificates are certificates that are qualitative, and they can validate those certificates and say, look, this university you have brought this certificate from is a thorough university, and we approve of this university. So I don't think the NUC has any mandate to regulate external universities. So it's quite unfortunate that students have become collateral damage of this situation. But again, it still boils down to the point of which we are saying, if the education standards in Nigeria was as brilliant as it ought to be, as it used to be in the past, given that we are the giant of Africa and we have a reputation to live up to, people, Nigerians especially, who have become the bulk of the victims of this university, you can imagine Nigerians having to fall victims to fake certificate racketeering outside the country. It wouldn't have happened if our own education system was thorough, was strong, was bold. So what needs to happen now is for us to have a looking into our own infrastructure here. Why should our own students continue running outside the country to get degrees from charlatan universities. It's an embarrassment to our own educational system. It's a second-hand embarrassment. Given our history and our reputation, it ought not to happen. So that we have to sit back and think of how to begin to reinforce our educational structures so that other potential victims no longer become victims of those kind of criminal activities run by universities outside the system. And it's also a wake-up call for us to improve the quality control across all sectors of regulatory agencies in Nigeria. That would only happen if education is made a priority, public education especially, and proper funding is allocated by the government, and not the government coming to say that it can no longer fund education and it's going to introduce private players or allow private players have a field day. As you have seen, private players are having a field day, but it hasn't improved the system. So government has to commit to improving the educational system in the country.
Thank you so much, Ikorebe, for your time. We appreciate you. Now we go on a quick break now, and when we return, Newsweek takes the center stage. Stay tuned. Welcome back. Now, this week, President Bola Ahmed Tinubu signed a 2024 appropriation bill into law. Speaking at the signing of the bill, the president assured Nigerians that the implementation of the budget will be efficiently pursued and vigorously monitored. He noted that the top priorities of the 2024 budget of 28.7 trillion naira are defense and internal security, job creation, macroeconomic stability, improved investment environment, human capital development, poverty reduction, and social security. The president emphasized that his commitment to enhance investment promotion while creating a rule-based society that favored no individual over the law begins with important reforms in the Nigerian judiciary, the funding for which is captured in the 2024 Appropriation Act. Now, joining me to discuss this is Ibrahim Garba, a political analyst and ready to roll with us. Ibrahim Garba, good evening and thank you for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
All right, now quickly, for the first time in a long while, we are looking at a budget that is more in capital expenditure than recurrent expenditure. Now, break it down for us in a common man's language, why you think this is very exciting to hear.
Oh, thank you very much once again for having me. I'm going to start with a simple analogy. That is, we have two young men nursing ambition as civil servants or as workers within an organization. You know, while one had a plan to, have a house, and at the same time have all necessary things available before going into marriage. On the other hand, the other person decided on his own to go into this marriage, living in a rented apartment, and at the same time having babies, children, not taking into consideration the costs that come with maintaining a family. So the other person who has, made a plan before going to marriage, for instance, he has his house to avoid rent, and at the same time, he's embarking on, programs and projects to ensure that even if he starts a family, he will be able to manage the family. There will be less pressure on him. So if you look at these two scenarios, you discover that going forward, there's going to be pressure on the other person who failed to plan, going into marriage, living in a rented apartment on a fixed salary going forward. So I just want to start with this analogy just to make you understand the situation of the country today concerning the budget. Previous years in the 70s, the 80s, and the 90s, we found that we have a lot of money in circulation, but we fail to plan because we have the oil boom and we focus on mono economy, which is we depended solely on oil productions to service our budget. That is on one hand. Then coming forward, within the years of Jonathan administration, where we have crude oil selling as high as $100 per barrel, we failed to save money for rainy days. We did not fund infrastructures. Monies meant for projects were diverted and all that. So the level of corruption was so high that you don't have money for infrastructural development. Now, coming forward towards the Buhari administration, you find out that there's much money to be invested in infrastructure and other recurrent expenditures. And that means the only alternative he has is to go into borrowing. And borrowing, he continues without looking at other alternatives, innovative ways to rebase the economy. Because if you continue to borrow, to fund, to pay salaries and pay subsidies on oil and all that, you are not going to have enough money to fund infrastructure or other capital projects. So this was the system during Buhari's administration. And that is why you find out the budget, for instance, yearly budget, 1/4 of it goes into subsidies, and the others goes into recurrent expenditure. So we have an economy that is weak, it's not on its feet. And thank God for the incoming administration of President Bola Ahmed Tinubu. A lot of people were skeptical about his coming. What is he coming to do? Right from the first day, he fired the first salvo by telling us Nigerians that, yes, subsidy is gone. And by telling Nigerians that means we should embrace reality. Subsidy going automatically means that we are going to free up money to take care of other infrastructures. And between that time, 6 months headlong, you found that a lot of money was saved. Now, apart from that, there was a need for President Bola Ahmed Tinubu to block leakages. He succeeded in doing that, and that is why he went after those that looted the treasury. You and I know what happened over these few months he spent in office. So coming forward, planning the budget, right from the first time, or rather last time they reviewed the budget, the coordinating minister of the economy, Wale, mentioning that unless we develop innovative and creative ways, we are going to find it very, very difficult to manage the economy because, one, we're operating on 98% deficit. How can Nigeria survive? So if you look at it theoretically, you find that Mr. President took a bold decision. All we need to do is to support him, be patient while he fixed the refineries, because putting money into these refineries to fix them definitely will help us to develop further and, reduce, crashing down the price of petroleum products as soon as Nigerian refineries begin to work. A lot has been said concerning the refineries by different people, but I see it as a big step towards giving us a lifeline.
All right, thank you very much. Now, quickly, the top priorities of the budget: defense and internal security, job creation, macroeconomic stability, and of course, improve investment and environment. Now, human capital development, poverty reduction, and social security. Now, the poverty reduction aspect, how should this be implemented to impact the common man almost immediately?
Oh, well, thank you very much. The last time I came here on the program, I mentioned one thing. The focus should be more on human capital development. At the same time, we should empower the Minister of Humanitarian Affairs, Social Development, that is Betta Edu. Her office have a critical role to play in this dispensation because we have a lot of dropouts. We have a lot of people who don't have access to capital. And we have women in our villages that are living below the poverty line. What do we need to do? We need to meet these people at the grassroots, empower them. How do we empower them? We tried to trade our money during the last administration. But when I came here, I mentioned one thing. Because of the previous experience, in which if you check what the EFCC is doing concerning, recovery of public funds and through the former minister, there's a need for us to develop more creative ways. What are the creative ways we should be looking at? We have 774 local governments across the nation. Now, with this, we have supervisory councillors. Why not deal directly with the supervisory councillors? Now, dealing directly with the supervisory councillors, they know the grassroots, they know where it pinches, they know who to support. And that when you do that, it's not just about supporting, creating avenues for people to make money. It's not just because giving money out, 25,000, 30,000 and all these things does not help the economy to grow. Rather, we should have a plan to make sure that we patronize cooperative societies at the grassroots. And when we give them this money, they go into investment. I think this is one of the ways I believe improve.
Okay, Mr. Ibrahim, very quickly, before we let you go, I have this very important question. Now, if you take a look at the last administration of 8 years, you can tell that the setbacks and the mishaps that happened in that administration is giving people a reason not to trust government anymore. Right now, every single idea that President Bola Ahmed Tinubu is trying to implement is settling on fragile patience. Now, how do you think the people's confidence can be boosted? What do you think can be done to immediately rekindle that confidence of the people with what is happening right now with the budget that has just been signed into law?
It's very simple. You know, he's President Bola Ahmed Tinubu is no God. He's a human being like you and I. And we need to begin to do more of public orientation. You know, the Federal Ministry of Information should do more in giving out more information about government policies and what we are doing, the government is doing to alleviate sufferings of the people. And at the same time, you see, what President Bola Ahmed Tinubu, especially in areas of public assets and recovery of public funds, is an example to show the people that this man means business. For quite a while during previous administration, people were arrested, and there's this through courts, people pay their way in and they go away with the money. But look at what Olukoyede is doing, for instance. Let me give you an example with what happened recently. They tracked this money, and this money is, a lot of them were recovered. Over 90% of this money is recovered. It shows you that this man means business. So if somebody has hit the ground running like that, all we do as Nigerians is, well, support this and give him that benefit of that. At least give him 1 year to see how far and what is going to happen. But if you start criticizing almost every step he's taking, calling him names, we're not going anywhere. By the way, this is Nigeria. This is our country. We must, as stakeholders, do all within our powers to ensure that this economy works for all.
All right, we're running against time here. Well, let's move on to the final story quickly before we let you go. And finally, operatives of the EFCC conducted a search operation at the Lagos head office of the Dangote Group. The Economic and Financial Crimes Commission, EFCC, is reportedly investigating 52 companies over foreign exchange transactions with the Central Bank of Nigeria. The EFCC is investigating forex allocations to the 52 companies under the leadership of the embattled former governor, Godwin Emefiele. The Anti-Graft Commission wrote to the various companies asking for documentation on their forex transactions in the last 10 years. Now, some of the companies under investigation include Dangote Group, BUA Group, and Flour Mills, but they have all denied wrongdoing in their communications with the EFCC. Now, stay with me to discuss this. Ibrahim, very quickly, let's go over this. Now, as a matter of fact, you can tell really that it's looking quite vivid. When the EFCC says they are going back 10 years, you know, to trace every transaction of their dealings with the central bank, what do you think we are looking at? What gravity of situation do you think we are looking at here?
We are looking at the administration of the central bank governor, Godwin Emefiele. Within the period he served in this government, we discovered some financial irregularities occasioned by this forex. A lot of people were given preferential treatment. You are selling, you know, the naira to the dollar at 300 or 310, and the open market, in the black market, they're selling it almost 500, 600, 700 naira to a dollar. Definitely, you are going to weaken the economy. You are empowering others to the detriment of other people. And again, you find that within this window period, this 10-year period, who are those running the BDCs? Very few individuals. Yeah, and these people, these same individuals are very, very powerful. Nobody can control them because they see themselves as godfathers. They see themselves as the people that matters more in this society. Now, when that happens, you discover that every day the economy continues to go down. It's not as if we're investing on import or export. It's not as if we're investing on agriculture. We're always interested in capital flight, taking money out of the country. And you agree with me with what happened recently. We found out 593 accounts operated by the former CBN governor in foreign countries. Is it not an embarrassment? So if you look at this situation, technically, you find out that the only way we can rebuild our economy is by fighting it in total to make sure that monies that disappear from our coffer and all those involved must be brought to good, because we need to recover our money and we need to put more money in circulation. All
right, well, we're actually running against time. In 30 seconds, now this is obviously happening within the big profile individuals. Now, as we know the culture of cases in Nigeria, will this ever get to the point where we get to experience, that final accountability we are looking for? Do you think this will get anywhere at all, especially involving these big profile names?
Look, let me tell you this. There's nothing like cabal or there's nothing like untouchable in this administration. Tinubu himself is a savior for all Nigerians. And I can assure you that whoever is involved, he will step on the tools and he will make sure that all public assets are recovered. No one will hold this nation to ransom. So long he came in and said subsidy is gone, he's ready to deal with anybody, any individual, any institutions that is trying to pull us down.
Thank you so much. We appreciate you. Because of time today, hopefully we can have you on some other time on a lengthy scale so we can have this discussion again. Thank you so much for coming.
Thank you for having me.
All right, and that's our show for today. Remember, you can follow the conversation on our social media handles at TVC News NG or on our website at tvcnews.tv. I am Mark Otabo. Have a good evening.